All right, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 83 of Embrace the Suck, and I have Pedro Zambrano with us. This is I think the third or fourth time at this point, and just a
Yeah.
regular guest. And you know what? I love it because we have some really good conversations off the show, but we really get together on here, and we're able to help the current 8411, and really anybody who has any kind of mental health things going on. So if you're listening and you're not an 8411 Marine recruiter, that's okay. We're really here to talk just about mental health, planning, God's plan for us, and and kind of surrendering to Him and giving Him the ability to lead us, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why I wanted Pedro to come on. So what? So I was just telling Pedro what's really been on my heart, and I don't. It's been probably about like 3 months. I've been wanting to do an episode, kind of just talking about my last tour of duty compared to the possible tour coming up.
Yeah.
So a lot of you don't know this, but I actually submitted. I start Rec Aid tomorrow, and I'm going to be in an office, back to being a recruiter all over again. So I'm going to be, working hand in hand with a couple of recruiters. So back to square one. I am really excited about it. Just that that a lot of things have changed in the past 2 years that I've been off the duty.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see what God's going to do in my life and on this duty. And I'm trying. I'll be honest. I'm really trying to be humble,
Yeah.
because it's something that I struggle with, right? And that's why I wanted to talk about this on the episode, was because the other night I was at men's Bible study, and somebody had we were talking about they had asked if somebody could give a representation of God, God's judgment, and then repentance. And if somebody had had an explanation, or if somebody at one point had done something and then God kind of was like, hey, you know what, I'm going to take this away from you. So I looked at the guy who was leading the Bible study. His name is Greg, and Greg knows my story. We've been talking probably about the past 6 months, and he just looked over at me as soon as I raised my hand, and he just kind of was like, oh, this is a really good one, because it really is like when and but the crazy thing is that 2 years ago I didn't see it this way. Like 2 years ago, I was very mad. I was very aggravated, and at the time I was like, God, why did you take this from me? Not realizing that like God had a plan for my life. Like God knew the directions, the paths, and He knew all these different things that I didn't know about, right? And also like, and this isn't me speaking for God because I can't, right? But this is the way that I look at it,
Yeah.
is that back in 2016, before I got on recruiting duty, I was heavily in the church. I was reading every day. I was worshiping every day. I was going to Bible study constantly. Me and my wife. My wife was helping with the children's ministry. I was going to like 3 or 4 different Bible studies. I was caretaking the land, like doing, the yard work, all this stuff. So I was really seriously serving, and I was very fervently serving. And at the time, I really wanted to come on recruiting duty. So that was the prayer, right? The church was praying for me, the pastor, everybody was praying, like, God, give him the opportunity to do this. And at the time, and like a lot of people, I promised God, right? I was like, yo, God, if you do this for me, I'm gonna do this, and the third. Like, I'm gonna do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I said was, I'm gonna be a Christian for you on recruiting duty, and I'm gonna show everybody what it's like to be a Christian, right? And serving God on recruiting duty. And God gave me the opportunity to be on recruiting duty, and I didn't do any of that. I became an alcoholic. I hid pornography from my wife. I didn't. So I'll be real. So before I got on recruiting duty, I was clean from pornography for a year and a half. So I spent a year and a half. So I was clean from pornography for 2 years before I got on duty. And going into the duty, I continued to stay clean from it for a year and a half. And
Yeah.
like whenever anybody would bring it up, Marines jokingly like would bring it up, I would be like, "Oh, nah, I'm not about that. I'm not doing that." And I would use it. I would tell them, "No, I don't watch porn, but whatever." And about, I think, 2 years into the duty, um, I started watching pornography again,
Yeah.
and I kept it from my wife. And then it lasted, I think, like probably about a good year and a half that I kept this from my wife. I didn't tell her about it. She knows now. And now I'm 2 years clean from pornography. But the reason why I bring all this up is that I sat here and I told God, like, yo, God, if you give me this opportunity, I'm not gonna do this, I'm not gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this. And actually, while I was really good at the duty, right, and I was successful, and I was recruiter of the quarter multiple times, and recruiter of the month, and station, all these different things,
Yeah.
my life wasn't right where it needed to be, right? And again, like, I didn't see this at that time. Like, at that time, like, I was in the newsletter, I was here, I was there, so I was like, yo, like, this is great, like, this is amazing, and I love the thrill of recruiting, and I love how invigorating it is. So I was just, the deer in the headlights, or the horse with the blinders on, whatever, which one you want to call it. So I got so hyped into winning and not missing mission, and now I'm a station commander, and my Marines are killing it, and now 100% shipping, and 100% contracting, and over contracting, and over shipping. Like, we're killing it, right?
Yeah.
And never once did I say, you know what, glory be to God, thank God. Like, never once when I stood up front did I say that. Never once. I didn't say any of that. But meanwhile, on the inside, I was drinking heavily every day. I wasn't going home to my family. Like, when I could be going home, I wasn't. I was just I was leaving the office, going to the bar. Or I was leaving the office and just sitting in my car, or whatever it was, right? And finally, God was just like, all right, well, you know what, man, like, I gave you a chance at this, and you didn't do what you said you were going to do, and he took it from me, right? So my 8412 package gets pulled. I don't become an 8412, and I'm disgruntled, and I'm mad at God, and I'm mad at the world, and I'm like, but this is how it was supposed to happen, and this is how this was supposed to happen. And next thing you know, I get off recruiting duty, and I become even more of an alcoholic, because now it's just me. There's no one, like, there's no Marines around me. They're working full time. I'm a reservist. We don't have a real base around here. So the only Marines I know are Marines on recruiting duty who are working full time. So
Yeah.
now it's just me sitting on my front porch, 90 days of terminal leave, just drinking by myself all day, or drinking on the porch, by myself when my wife's sleeping, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be right in. And meanwhile, no, I'm not going to be right in. I'm just, because I'm drinking.
Yeah.
So, just kind of got worse, progressively worse. And then finally I get a new job. I'm in sales, but I still don't like it. It's not the same sales as the Marine Corps recruiting duty. And still not going to church, still not reading, still not praying. And then I get a new job a year and a half later. Now I'm in another career, same career field, but different college.
Yeah.
And same thing. I'm not happy with it. I'm not enjoying it. But the difference, though, is got the new job in November. I stopped drinking in September. So now, fast forward, I'm 7 months sober. Um,
That's what's up, though.
and yeah, and the worst part about it is that I never thought I had a problem, right? I was like, oh, like, even now, I'm still like, oh, I keep telling myself all the time, I'm like, oh, I can have one. And I'm just like, nah, I'm like, I'm not even gonna test the waters with just one. But the reason why I bring all of this up is because it wasn't until recently, like, I think January timeframe, that I started going back to men's Bible study. And I went to church one day, and then this guy, Greg, on my way out, pulled me aside, and he was like, hey, man, I've seen you around here for like the past 4 or 5 years. But he was like, we run a men's Bible study. We'd love to have you. And since then, I've been at men's Bible study every Thursday since, I think January.
Yeah.
And but now that I've been back in church, back in reading,
Yeah.
now my relationship with God is a lot better. I feel the Holy Spirit. I feel like these different conversations, like, I'm having different conversations with different people, like, crazy things are happening, around me, like, and it's just because, now I'm not trusting myself. I'm trusting him. Right.
Yeah.
And the other day, I want to share this because it was just such an amazing thing that happened. So I'm not going to tell all 5 instances because we'll be here all night, but
Yeah.
I'm going to tell one of them, right? So the other day, it was Sunday morning, and I couldn't be at church because I had drill.
Mhm.
So I was listening to this new Christian rap album. It's called Light Work by Bizzle. And
Okay.
if you're not familiar with him, please go check him out. Plug it. Like, yo, phenomenal album. Such a blessing. So
Okay.
I'm listening to the album, and it's like probably like my fourth or fifth time listen. It released on Friday, Sunday. So it's like probably like my fifth or sixth time listening to it through.
Mm,
And I don't know what it was, but I just left the house, and then when I woke up that morning, the first thing I said to like I woke up out of bed and I was like, God, I want you to use me in a mighty way today.
yeah.
That's all I said. And I've never said that before. I've never I've never just woken up and been like, yo, like I've never done that before, right? So get out of bed, roll out of bed, get dressed, put my camis on. Well, no, sorry. Just put my clothes on. And I needed gas. I forgot that I needed gas. So I pull up to the gas station and this guy comes over, and I was pumping my own gas, but in Jersey you're not supposed to. So pumping my own gas, the guy comes over, he's like, how can I help you? Whatever. So long story short, he walks away. And as he walks away, I'm like, yo, I need to invite this man to church.
Yeah.
You need to invite this man to church. And then I was like, nah, man, I don't got time for that. Like, I'm gonna be late to drill. So I go to get into my car. And as I get into my car, two things happened. One, I was like, my thought process was, bro, you just asked God to use you in a mighty way. He's giving you an opportunity to be used by him, and you're gonna drive away. So then as I'm having this thought, I look down and the guy Greg gave me these little squares that say our church's name on it, and then
Yeah.
on the back has a QR code.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so I was just like, so easy, how easy can it get, right? So I get back, so I go into the car, I grab one, I handed it to the guy, and I invited him out on church on Thursday, but hasn't answered. I haven't talked to him since, but but I did, I planted the seed, right?
Yeah.
So then that same day, um, formation just got over, and I'm talking to one of my Marines, and we were talking about so there's two Marines. One of the Marines was Chan, one of the Marines was Chang, and another one was I'm not sure what his other name was, but we have three Asian Marines that were sitting in front of us. So the two, I asked them, I was like, "Oh, what's your name? Like, what's your name?" And
Mm,
the guy Marine, I don't remember what I think it was Alexander, and then the other Marine is like, "Oh, it's Ryan." And I was like, "Wait," I was like, "Really?" Like, and I'll be real, I was expecting like some because I've heard, so I was like, "Oh, really?" So then I don't call this other Marine over. The other Marine that was sitting next to me, Sergeant
yeah.
Cristalis, there's another Marine, Sergeant Chan, who's standing at the copy machine. And Sergeant Cristalis is like, "Yo, Chan." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yo, come over here." So he comes walking over. And I'm like, "Hey, man." I'm like, "What's your," no, he says, I'm sorry. So he says, "Hey, man, what's your name?" And he goes, "Chan." He goes, "No, what's your first name?" He goes, "Oh, it's Jebediah." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, that's dope." I was like, "Well, where'd you get that from?" He's like, "Oh, my dad's, a devout Christian. My mom's a Christian." And I was like, "What about you?" And he was like, "Well, and I was like, "No." I was like, "What does that mean?" And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, well, I'm a Christian." And I was like, "Are you?" Because you sounded like you kind of like skeptical on that. And he's like, "No, I am." He's just like, but I'm not walking right, and my relationship isn't where it needs to be. And I
Mm,
was like, "Oh, wow." And I was like, and then I just looked at him and I was like, "Well, first of all, the fact that you just said that in front of five Marines, men, right, is a testament alone because you're being, open with us to tell us that your walk with God isn't right. And you don't even know if any of us are believers, like, but you're just being open with it."
yeah.
And but long story short, I just kind of started talking with him, sharing, just kind of like trying to encourage him. And I ended up Thursday night after Bible study, same thing. But that was two instances. And that day, like four or five different times things happened through that day where I was able to, actually talk to people about God, the word, like share my testimony. And I was like, bro, all I got to do is ask him to give me an opportunity, and he's going to.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I wanted to do this episode tonight, because like with me going back on the bag, right now it's just Renegade, but I am submitting my EAD package. So, I'm trying to I'm trying to give. I'm gonna be real. I'm trying. It's hard, right? It's really hard to surrender and just say, "Hey, you know what? It's in your hands, God." Right? Because I said that in February, and
Yeah.
then since February till now, I've been like, "Yo, why haven't my orders gotten approved? Like, why is this getting kicked back and all this stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, my orders get approved for May 1st, and all three of my kids' birthdays are in April. And yesterday, my children, my daughter and my son, they got their Hebrew names. So in my mind, now I'm like, bro, God just wanted to give me that whole month for me to be able to be with my family, not have anything else be on my mind or get in the way. And now here, let's go off on this path. So it's just, that's really what's on my mind right now.
It's amazing that you said, because a good friend of mine and I were talking today. He's passing through Arizona for a house because, come August 1st, him and I are going to high five each other. He's going to go ahead and take care of everything here in Arizona. And as we were discussing things this morning, we were talking about how the opportunities present themselves for us to be able to let God move through us so that we can be the example for somebody else. And throughout our conversation, we brought up different times when our work or our results were way more important than what we let it out to be. Our aim for what we wanted to actually make important took the backseat to something else, and it was usually towards mission. Something what we, all me, him, and what you love, the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
A lot of times we put the people that we care about in the back seat. We say we do it for them, but really, when you take a look at it, you start peeling it away. It's always for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
You said, in the beginning, you aim to come out and you're like, man, Father, I want to do this. And I want to do it in your name.
Yeah.
But the enemy always picks something that's going to pull you away from it. And it's a city. And the one that as you mentioned, everything you were talking about was vanity.
Yeah.
Likes the
yeah. Bro, and that's what I'm trying to make sure, like, I don't do again, right? Because it already happened, right? Like, I asked the guy who was, in charge. I was like, "Yo, we make a mission next month. Like, let's go." And immediately I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna make TC. I'm gonna prove that I can make contracts so just off of TCing, right? And I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do this." And then all of a sudden I was just like, "Bro, you're doing it all over again." I was like, you haven't even started and you're already doing it. And and then the other day, we went away on vacation for a 1-day trip. And so something I've always had a problem with is pride. Very big. That's like a huge problem for me. And especially as a Marine, that's what we're told, right? One of the benefit tags is pride of belonging. So like I've been told, like, hey, be proud, be proud. So I actually talked to Vic the other day about this a couple weeks ago. Because I was at men's Bible study and the topic of discussion was pride. And pride comes before the fall. And we were talking about it. And I was like, so I called him after church because I was like, and I think I don't know if these were my exact words, but I was like, I don't think these civilians understand. I was like, because as we're Marines, we're proud. And I was like, and there's no problem with being proud. And he was like, hold on a minute. He was like, calm down. He was, and the reason why I called him was because I was like, I want to be able to talk to a master gunnery sergeant of Marines, and I want to be able to talk to a fellow Christian. So immediately I tell him this and he corrects me and he goes, stop. He goes, he said, I'm a Christian who happens to be a master gunnery sergeant. And I was like, okay, you're right. But we start to talk about it and, and God, because this is a big issue that I've always had because my whole life I was never really proud of anything. I never had anything of my own. I didn't, I lived in apartments growing up and, I had hand-me-downs from friends. So now all of a sudden, as I'm coming up in the Marine Corps and, now I have my own house and now I have all these things, I'm proud of them. But then it's like, well, no, you need to be proud and thankful that God gave you these things because that's what it is. They're a gift from God. So like God's really been talking to me a lot about pride. And craziest thing is, so I say crazy, but really it's just God doing what he does, right? So the other day we went away for the day and my son woke up at 2:30 in the morning just crying. And normally when my son wakes up I'll grab my phone and then I'll just like go up and down, scrolling on Instagram or whatever. But
Yeah.
like for whatever reason, I didn't, and I just opened up the Bible app, and my buddy Greg recently had said he was like, God spoke to me and told me to read this sermon, or God spoke to me and told me to read this verse. And I was just like, yo, so I'm laying there in bed, it's 2:30 in the morning, and I'm like, God, I'm like, is there something wrong with me that I've never felt that? I'm like, cause like I don't feel like God's ever told me to go read this verse, right? So I'm like, is there something that I'm just not doing? Is there something, right? And I'm just like kind of like, I don't want to say I'm annoyed, but I'm just like, I don't get it. And
Mm-hmm.
then, so then I said that so I'm thinking that in my head. And the next thing that I'm thinking is Greg also recently said, I was asking him for help with a certain situation on how to disciple somebody. And he was like, hey, man, he was just like, just search the scriptures. And I was like, bro, I've been in the church since I'm 5. I've been told to search the scriptures my whole life. I don't know what that means. Like what? So I'm kind of frustrated laying in bed, right? And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I just get this like it happens. And
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden in my head, James 4:5. So I'm just like, okay, what is that even? What is that? So I
Yeah.
go to James 4:5. Let's see where it's at. So I just want to read it. So I go to James 4:5, and I'm like, well, first of all, like, why? Because I don't know, like, why that would be the thing, or I guess just mad random. So I go to James 4:5, and I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't make sense. So then I go up one more verse. So James 4:4. You adulterous people, do you not know that the friendship with the world is an enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world make himself an enemy of God. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the scripture says he yearns jealously over the spirit that he has made to dwell in us, but he gives more grace. Therefore, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
Mm-hmm.
Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. So immediately I'm reading this, and I'm like, God opposes the proud. And I'm like, bro. So now I'm like, hold on. I'm like, immediately I text Greg, and I'm like, yo, it happened. I was like, it happened. But it was just an amazing thing and the feeling to be like, you know what? Like, and I remember like a couple weeks ago, Greg had said to me, he goes, it's not that it can't happen to you. He's like, it's just that you're not at the place where God needs you to be for you to hear him. And I was like,
Powerful right there.
And yeah, man. And it's just like, and that's really what God has been talking. Like, that's how what I've been personally going through, is just like trying to stop being proud of myself, like, oh, look at what I did, or oh, look at what we did, or like, look at all this. And because the reality of it is that yes, my actions did that, but at the end of the day, if I don't have the right heart, then it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
So with you saying those things about the pride and how the pride always comes before the fall, and you know I have so much love for you, brother, because of the path of like recruiter aid and EAD and time in the Marine Corps and going through some of the challenges, and the timing that we want probably never matches the timing that God is building for us.
yeah,
And what I learned and experienced is that many times, as I was told, it was in the way of not getting what I wanted, or believing that I deserved something, and I was having to wait because I felt frustrated, or I felt just angry. I would naturally put stress on myself, and cause myself some anguish internally, because I believed and I felt I deserved more,
mm-hmm.
because of the just the vanity gets fed.
Yeah,
Vanity rewards, it gets fed through recognition, while we should remain humble and have humility. It's really hard to have humility when you're like, I always want to get I'm in an environment right now that it's always telling me I got to be the best, everything that's the
yeah,
best. And I'll
yeah,
tell you, there was a time when, man, I'll say, whew, we're talking about 13 years ago now. I remember getting recognized as the recruiter of the year. And I was like, man, I felt vindication. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Hey, I did this. Cool. And so I was like, I deserve more. And when I didn't get what I believed I deserved, because I wasn't meritoriously promoted as an EA year because there were zero allocations, and others were promoted, and that I knew. Um,
Yeah.
I had a dark heart at that point, and then as
Bro.
I fed it forward, and I finally took another opportunity for leadership because I moved up and then I stepped down. I was a sergeant of a 1 in 6 with nothing but staff and COs. And then they said, hey, you didn't get promoted. And the new CO doesn't believe in sergeants running RSSs. So go back to being a canvas and recruiter. So I stepped up to step down.
Oh.
Yeah. So then, I had to swallow.
Yeah.
Or so like absorb it.
Yeah.
But fast forward a couple years later, brother, and the light bulbs turned on. And they turned on because then I led a Marine who was just like me, who felt torn, who felt, just betrayed by like, I don't have what I deserve right now, even though I work so hard and I believe I'm doing so well.
Yeah.
At that point, that was one of the first times in my life, like as an adult. As a child, I don't remember them. But as an of me realizing that God wasn't making me wait because I didn't deserve it. He was making me wait because somebody else deserved it from me so that I could lead them down the path.
Bro.
So when it happened, piece by piece, as the years have gone on, I've learned and I constantly still see it even today that when it doesn't happen in the time you want it and you're feeling like, hey, these things aren't going the way I want to, it's usually because God is wanting to change you and not the situation. So
Bro,
they
it's so true, bro. It is so true because like this past 2 years, man, like and not only that, like so I didn't get vaccinated, right?
yeah,
So when I got off the bag and then the whole COVID thing happened and my unit was like, you got to get vaccinated. And I was like, no, I'm not going to. And then I did a religious exemption. And I'll be honest, like when I didn't have faith, right? I was talking to my buddy Greg about this. I'll,
yeah,
I'll be honest, I didn't have faith. I immediately put in the religious exemption, and then everybody was like, "Bro, it's gonna get denied. Like, they're not even gonna hear it." And then I was like, "All right, well, I'll just keep, see how long it's gonna happen, right?" And I didn't have faith in God. I'll be real. And then all of a sudden they just did not the whole mandate just got squashed,
yeah.
and now here I am like, wait a minute, and now this recruiting thing comes back into play, and it's like all these other things are going on in my life that I didn't realize were even happening. And but it's like, but you're right though, I can definitely say I've grown a lot in the past 2 years, as a father, as a husband. Me and my wife's relationship is better than it's ever been. And now, with my son, my newest son, I was able to be here. I was there for the birth. I was, not on a mission letter, so I was able to be there every day. So God gave me this, this different look at life as a father. And now, 7 months sober, and now I'm excited. Okay, well, what's next, right? And I'm just kind of trying. I'm telling you, like, the hardest thing for me is that humbleness and that pride, and just really trying to just make sure that I don't do the same thing again, right? and
Yeah.
and making it, and I believe that I don't, because I'm in a different position in life. I've more matured, and I've cut the drinking out and everything like that. So now I'm like, okay, I've been going to the gym every day for the past like 9 months. So now I'm like, okay. So I told my wife, I was like, listen, starting May 1st, I was like, because I right now I have orders from 1 month. I was like, I have 1 month of Recade. That's all I have right now. So I
Mm,
was like, starting May 1st, I gotta make sure that I stay in the gym this time.
yeah.
I gotta make sure I stay in the word. I gotta make sure that, I'm praying with the kids before bed, making sure that we're talking. And because like if it doesn't happen this first month, then it's not going to happen.
Mm,
So I need this from the jump. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on
mm,
is like, what advice do you have for anybody when it comes to like the day insight, the month insight? Like, how do we plan for the most effective day while including, our worship, our family, our children, like, how do you plan for your day? And like, and I know that now, like, you as an RI is a very different plan as a canvassing recruiter. So can you kind of like talk about like,
Yep.
your advice from maybe each standpoint or whatever advice you can give on that?
So, building out the week and building out the month, first day every day as soon as I roll out, right? Roll out, roll over, try to stretch.
Yeah.
My first thing that I do is I get on my knees and I pray. And I thank God for another day. And I had this routine when I was growing up, because I grew up in a big family, that I would wake up and go and go into everybody's room, my mom, my grandmother, my brothers and sisters, and I would touch their feet, or I'd just touch their hand or whatever, and just thank God for letting me still have my family. So the first thing every day, no matter what, it's automatically been a part of my daily routine for a long time now, for nearly a decade, is giving thanks to God. And then after that, after I go through, get up, PT, and go on my drive to work, I listen to worship music. So you mentioned the artist that you're listening to, the Christian rapper. So I was doing the station for the rapper Lecrae, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Like Christian rap, and I'll listen to him, or I have my own playlist.
Mhm.
But as I drive and I'm looking to clear my head, there's times I'm listening to Christian rap, or just some good music, some good spiritual music, or I have the radio silent and I just clear.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm either listening to worship music, or I have it silent so that I can speak to God on my way to work. Right. So I do all of these things before I get to the office.
Got it.
Now, the moment that I arrive, when I'm there, with all my Marines, I made it a point. Hey, man, look, I'm not a saint. You know what I'm saying? So I'm probably gonna do some things. I might say some things that'll be, not of someone that you see, or you're gonna be like, oh, that guy's like, oh, he believes God, pushing God on everybody. But I make sure to keep an outlook to where, like, I want to go through and have the Ezekiel 33:2, the watcher, right? The one who absorbs and accepts responsibility for everything, and knows that anything that's under my watch, and the protection and the prosperity of the people that are entrusted to me, it's my responsibility. So in my drive, like I said, I'm listening to worship music, I arrive, I handle my duties and responsibilities. And then I make an effort, and every time I have a conversation with any of my Marines, through my routine throughout the day, I'll include something that leads to being able to have humility. And I got it from a few DCOs back, when a couple years back, and he got it from a chaplain, from a naval chaplain, that the definition of humility is power under control. So I live with that, to be able to say, okay, even though I have a lot of power right now, how can I control it? But I
Mm.
demonstrate it in a way to where I'm authentic and genuine with everyone that I encounter. Now, when I get to my lunchtime, right, or whatever that is, might be beef jerky and a freaking energy drink. I say a prayer. So I'm daily going through and living out, like daily prayer things, and just disciplines throughout the day. In the evening, as on my drive home, same thing, worship music again. Coming back home on Saturdays, all my Marines around here, when they see me go somewhere, they usually see me with my family. So I'm not the guy that talks about my family's important and I don't take them with me. I'll take them to the pool functions. They'll see me interact with my wife. They'll see me interact with my daughter. Just living out what I want them to honestly see, but also absorb that, hey, this guy's been on recruiting duty. He still has his wife. He's good with his kids. He's living it out every day. He's not claiming to be the perfect person. He's just claiming to be an authentic person. But they'll see me go through all of that. And the number one, the way you see it all the time, is you see on social media. There's times I'll do post in a story that has nothing to do with the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
It'll have everything to do about faith.
Mhm.
So as you asked, in my SNR, in my routine, every
Mhm.
already ingrained in without the Marine Corps telling me to do it. It's just something that I do.
Yeah.
So I prepare myself for the day, and as I move through, and there's times I'll say a prayer in the morning, asking like, God, I'm going to have a meeting today. Sometimes anger and frustration may come out, but with my best intention and with your best intention, please guide me. And if you say something that doesn't replicate or doesn't insinuate what you want to come out from me, let me be able to be apologetic and take onus if I do something like that, so that I can still get I want to have happen, because I care about all my Marines and I want them to do well. I night for them than I do myself, because they're the ones the tough job, prospecting, self driving all night, spending a lot of time away from their families. But I make it a point so that when they see me, I'm hoping that they see all the little points, instead of being angry because I make them do their job.
Yeah.
See all the little points of like how I include my family, how I'm not afraid to put it on social media, how I'll do it at work. They go into my office. There's no awards or anything on the wall. All I have is a Marine Corps banner, because I was told by somebody that I need to make it look a little bit like an office, right? So I have a Marine Corps banner, I have a book, and then I have pictures of my wife and my kids. That's it, man. Everything else is, hey, I don't need that stuff on the wall. I just need you to know that it's me and you here, like, together. That's the way I approach it. But another great thing is that I have is a daily devotional. I know that me and Master Genny Montanez, he's the one that actually inspired me to do it, and it's a 365 daily devotional he got from Chad.
Oh, I have that one. I gotta, yeah.
I'm
All right. So now, you know what? I'm gonna hold myself accountable by doing it with two of you.
yeah, so read it in the mornings, and a lot of the daily devotionals I take, and then I make a strong effort to apply them when I'm living out whatever I'm going to do on that specific day. It's challenging. There's days, man, the plan goes to crap, right?
Yeah.
It goes to crap because we're going through our duties and responsibilities, and some stress or anything might take place, and so you're going to falter at times, and being very rigid with yourself to like, if I don't do this, it's not going to work. Yeah, honestly, man, it's probably not always going to work.
Yeah.
Have to be honest with yourself about is that can't really rely it all on yourself. You just have to really put it in God's hands, and whatever direction God wants you to go, He's taking you there for a reason.
Yeah.
And go through and experience each portion. Even if you build out a perfect plan, it's not your perfect plan that's built, it's His. He knows what's in your heart and where you go. He'll be the one guiding and directing you. But you got to consistently put on every piece, right? The helmet, breastplate, everything, brother. Like you make it a conscious effort to add continually to yourself, because if you try to stand on your own, dog, you're always gonna fall.
Yeah, man, and that's literally what I've been just dealing with, man, and learning and just kind of just and I was telling my buddy this the other day, Greg. I was telling him, I think it's awesome that before I was on recruiting duty, I mean, before this like 2-year hiatus, I guess you could call it, I didn't know any Marines that were like legitimate, like Christians that like were in church, like going to like actually in the word. And then all of a sudden, buddy of mine, Gunny Ujama, introduces me to Master Gunny Montanez. And then, I've been talking with him like the past like year and a half.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I end up, I don't even remember. I still can't even remember. I think I just found you on Instagram, and then I invited you on the podcast. And then Master Guns Montanez was like, "Oh, yo, I saw how you see my boy. You have my boy Pedro on." And I was like, "Wait, y'all know each other?" He's like, "Bro, we're brothers." And now I'm like, "Wait a minute." So God like put the two of you in my life as two people. It's like, wow, man. And that's what it is, man. It's crazy, how we do all of this planning. And now, mind you, listen, if you're listening to this and you're 8411, nobody's telling you not to create a plan. Nobody's saying that. Like, don't go, oh, I heard this podcast. I said, don't create a plan. No. We're just saying include God in your plan. Let him include you in his plan. Because that's what we do, right? We create these plans for our own lives.
Mhm.
And oh, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna buy this house, or I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, where do I fit in there? Right. And I heard recently that God doesn't want to be part of your life, he wants to be your life.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, like, because oftentimes, right, and I'm even now talking about it, it's like, okay, how do I fit him into my day? It's like, no, 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 no. Like, we it needs to be in, like, God is a jealous God, right? And he wants to be worshiped all the time. So how do we do that? We do that by living the right way. We do that by reading. We do that by, how do we speak? What's coming out of our mouth, right? What are we ingesting? What are we digesting? Like,
Yeah.
and that's really what's been on my heart. Like, just like, okay, how do I do this better? How do I, and like you said, though, the biggest thing is just doing it, but also ensuring that, because if I put too much on myself, I'm gonna mess up.
Yeah.
And well, regardless, I'm gonna mess up, right? We're not perfect. But
Mhm.
it's like with the drinking for me, right? I've been clean, I've been sober 7 months. And one of the things that I noticed about myself was, I was like, if I tell myself I will never drink again, I'll probably slip up and drink. So I'm not saying I'll never drink again. It's just that right now I don't want it. And I'm just not drinking, right? So, and I think that, if I continue to go that way with other things in my life, and I just, I start praying daily, I start reading daily, and now it's a yearning that I want to be in communion with God.
Yeah.
And it wasn't before, I'll be real, it wasn't. But now, if I can't be at church, I'm aggravated. Or if I can't be in the word, or if I'm not doing this, it's so now it's like it's a missing part, so now I'm like, okay, that shows growth, that shows prosperity, that shows maturity. So that's really what I'm looking at, is going into this second tour, if God willingly, if it happens, I'm really just looking at it, okay, how can I be used, and just do things better this time around, you know what I mean?
And I like when you say, like, because you knowing that you want to do things better, you want to improve, you have a direction and an aim for how you want to approach it. That's a great thing, because look, we don't have many Marines that do that, bro. We don't have many people that do that, period. So knowing that you have a desire to want to take a stronger, healthier approach to living out your beliefs, and being like the vessel and the instrument to demonstrate your faith to others, so that when they see you, they're like, you know what, there's something about that guy, man. Like, this job is challenging. Every day he shows up and he's got a smile.
Yeah.
This kid told me no, that kid told me no, these kids went to MEPS, they all freaking fell through. I've been working all hours this week, but he's still hungry to go out there and help people. What they don't recognize, brother, is that you're a fisher of men.
Mm,
And because you have that naturally in you,
yeah.
you're drawn to, and the talent that you have is to connect with people.
Mm,
That's something God wants to use through you.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and and what's crazy, like, going off of that,
yeah.
is just, something that it happened to me recently.
Uh-huh.
Was before I was thinking about getting back on the duty, I went, I went to talk to somebody, and she had a Marine Corps lanyard on, and I went up to her. I was at the gym. I just walked at the gym and I saw it, and I turned around. And I was like, "Oh, hey!" I was like, "So, like, are you joining the Marine Corps or whatever?" And she's like, "Oh no, I'm disqualified for such and such." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Well, who were you working with?" And she was like, "Oh, I was working with the staff sergeant out of Toms River." And I was like, "Oh, I'm actually going over to work there." Blah blah blah. And but long story short, after I did talk to her, got her name, whatever, I went and sat in my car, and all of a sudden, I started to think about, I was like, yo, you can walk up to anybody
Hmm.
and share the Marine Corps gospel. Like, you can talk to them all day about how great the Marine Corps is, about how this, and the third. And I was like, but yet, if it was the opposite way around,
Hmm.
and I was to go talk to them about God and Jesus and what he's done for you in your life, I won't do that. And I was just like, "Bro, like, what's wrong with you?" Like, and I started thinking about that in the car. I was like, "Bro, God's calling you to be a Christian, to be a fisher of men. God is calling you. He's given you this talent, but yet you're on mission for the Marine Corps, but you're not on mission for him.
Mm.
And then since that day, I've been a lot more like if God puts it on my heart to go talk to somebody, I'll go talk to them. Or if I hear something, I'll turn around and go, embrace the conversation. And it's because like I started to think about it. It's like God gave me this gift to be able to talk to people, and the way that I talk and communicate, people receive it. They're very receptive to what I say.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I need to start being more vocal about his mission, and not just mine, not just the Marine Corps. And and the thing is, I used to say this to everybody all the time, like, if you saw a really good movie, what do? You talk about it. You tell people about it. And it's like, but why am I not telling people about God? Like, why am I not telling people about what he's done for me in my life? Why am I not telling people, about him saving me from alcoholism or pornography or all these different things that I've dealt with in my life that he's taken from me? You know what I mean? So it really put that on my heart.
And it's challenging, like you're mentioning. We're good at we're good at talking about the brand.
Yeah.
It's we live, breathe, and emulate. And so it's so easy for everyone else to say, man, I want that.
Yeah.
I want what they have. I want the fact that, like, how strong they are, their confidence, their sense of belonging to each other. Like, we naturally, because we love this so much, we do that without even being told.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, I'm only reiterating what you said because it's even been on my mind for a while too.
Yeah.
Like, we're so good at doing this because we really believe and love and enjoy the organization and the product. I'm not saying that Christianity or God's love and believing in Jesus Christ is a product.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I'm only saying this because the question, why can't we do it for other people? What's the fear of it?
Mm-hmm.
And the fear is the rejection of the world because it's not popular. It's not popular because it's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And most times the conversation doesn't have to be uncomfortable, and we kind of make too much of it on how to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
So all I say is just live, breathe, emulate that same type of energy towards your love for being a man of God. And
Yeah.
people will see, desire, and want to be known for it. Like the curiosity will build the interest, and that interest will build.
Well, yeah, and also when it comes to like the not knowing how to talk or the fear of the rejection, it's also like I said on that day, right, where I prayed, I was like, God, use me in a mighty way. Like, so what happened was I was walking down the hallway. I was trying to get my EAD package signed, right, and I'm all flustered, like trying to get these signatures done, and um, walking down the hallway, and there's this group of Marines, corporals, lance corporals. They just got done running a PFT, and they're all just sitting in this like little area. And I walk by, and I hear abortion, something else, something else. So now immediately, and the first thought I had was, bro, just keep walking. You got to get your package done. Then the next thought I had was, bro, you need to go and have a conversation. God is giving you this opportunity. You heard that. Go walk over there. So I go walk over, and then I'm like, hey, gents. I'm like, so what's going on, guys? And then one of them was a sergeant. He's like, uh-oh. He was like, staff sergeant about to get into it. And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, so what's the topic of discussion? What do we talk about? And the corporal was like, all right. He's like, you just found out your baby mama's having a baby, and you find out that you got, they do an ultrasound. They find out that the baby is going to have Down syndrome or some sort of mental defect. Do you abort it? And I was like, no. And they were like, what? And I was like, no. So then I said, okay, let me ask a question I was like, let me ask one question before I even start this conversation. They were like, okay. I was like, all right, do you believe in God? And he was like, I do. I was like, okay. So I was like, all right, so you believe in God? He's like, I do. I was like, do you believe God perfect? He's like, I do. I was like, so you believe that God didn't make no mistakes? He's like, nah, he didn't make no mistakes. I was like, all right, so who are you to decide that baby should die? I was like, because God, if you're saying that you're a believer, which you just told me, I was like, in the Bible, it says that God knitted that baby perfectly in the womb. So I was like, that baby is perfect in God's image. I was like, God made that baby that way. So who are you to say that it doesn't deserve to live?
Yeah.
Oh, and then he was like, oh, but. I was like, all right, tight. I was like, okay. So let me tell you a story. So I tell them this story. So last week, about 2 weeks ago,
Mm.
no, last Thursday, I had to go to an event for my job. So I'm
Yeah.
at this career fair for veterans, and I meet this man who I'm going to have on the podcast. I'm excited because I want to tell his story. Well, I want him to tell his story because it's a phenomenal story. So I don't want to butcher it. So I'm going to kind of make it the best I can.
Yeah.
But long story short, when I met the man, he came to my table, and he had a scar right here. So he had a trachea performed on him, tracheotomy, right? Yeah. So he's standing there with his mother, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but something along the lines of, God's got a plan. And oh yeah, so he came over to my table and he was like, oh no, I'm not interested, like what you have, I already have a degree, da 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 da.
Mm.
And your program won't be for me. So I just looked at him and I was like, hey man, I was like, you know what, brother, I was like, God's got a plan, there's a reason why you're here today. And I was like, but I hope, take a pamphlet and carry on about your day, go to the next table or whatever. And the mom, she goes, God does have a plan because my son was dead. And I was like, what? I was like, excuse me? And she was like, yeah, my son was dead. And I was like this son that's sitting next to you? She's like, yep, yep. And I was like, ma'am, I was like, if you don't mind, like I would love to hear the story.
Yeah.
So long story short, from what I understand or can remember, the young man was on a motorcycle, and I don't remember if he was in Germany. I believe he was in Germany,
Hmm.
but he was on a motorcycle, and somebody came from behind him, and they crashed into him, and they ran over him. He fell off the motorcycle. He was in a puddle of blood, and he flatlined, like died.
Yeah.
And right behind him was an ambulance. The ambulance pulled up. They put him in the ambulance. They performed the tracheotomy. And then by the grace of God, like 3 minutes down the street was a trauma unit. So they bring him to the trauma unit. They get him back to life while he's in the truck, and then they get him there and they're prepping him for surgery. And they call home to try to get a hold of his mother, but they can't. So
Yeah.
long story short, they get a hold of the police in the local area, and the police go to his house and they tell his mom that he's dead.
Wow.
Not that he's like in the hospital battling for his life. They just tell her he's dead. So now the mom, she had been going to this church for like 36 years, and she was very faithful in the church that she was going to. And at the time, they had missionaries that were visiting from like some foreign country.
Mm.
And so she told the pastor what was going on. So the whole entire church started praying for her son.
Yeah.
And she was praying that he would be alive, because at this moment she doesn't know that he's alive.
Yeah.
So she's praying that, like, God, I hope that you can say, it's like faithfully, like, God, take care of my son. And then the missionaries, they told their home country. So now people in that country were praying for him. And like, so all this prayer is going on left and right, and just surrounding them. And so they end up doing an emergency surgery on the young man. And the doctor says he'll never walk again. So then he says, the doctor also said, multiple doctors said that he won't even live. They were like, if he lives, like, his chances of survival are this, and he won't live like however many years. Like so all these doctors are saying that, and then they're saying that he'll never walk again.
Yeah.
So now I'm telling the Marines this story because that Marine walked up to me at my table and is still active. He does CrossFit daily and he does all these things. So I said to the Marines, I was like, according to today's medical doctor,
Yeah.
that young man was dead and that young man could never walk again. So
Uh-huh.
if that mother took their guidance and just killed her son, then she wouldn't have a walking, but she had faith and she believed that God had a plan for her son, and now he's walking around doing CrossFit. And I was like, so again, who are you to say that that body inside that mother doesn't deserve life?
Yeah.
And they were like, and that was kind of the end of the conversation. But the reason why I bring that up right now is because, if we have a relationship with Christ and we have a relationship with God, and we pray that he'll use us when like that should, right? If we're being correct here, like that should wipe away that fear. Like it's
Yep.
are we still gonna have it, right? But if we surrender that fear and we say, God, use me in a mighty way to be able to, preach your gospel, be able to preach your word. And then what's he going to do? He's just going to give us the words that we need to say to that person or whatever. And then it's also important that we remember that it's our job
Mm-hmm.
to just plant the seed. Like that's
Yep.
it. Like, it's our job to plant the seed, and then God will bring in other people. And like I excuse me, I invited my neighbor over to church, and he just said, "Nah, man, I'm good. I'm not religious." So I just texted him back, and I was like, "You don't need to be religious to come to church." And and hey, you know what? If one day he, maybe someone at work brings it up to him, and then all of a sudden he starts seeing like God's trying to do some work in his life, like that's all. That's all we need to do.
Absolutely. And so my wife and I, we watch our church online. It's Lake Point. It's in Rockwall, Texas. We're members of that church. And a pastor said years ago, and yet when he talked about people making a decision to come to Christ, and how he drew that it was like a decision bridge, right? Like we're never really the last step. Sometimes we're the first, the middle, or the second, third. But we always want to be the last step because we just like, hey, I want God to use me so that I'm the one that turns that person. But it's very rarely like. And when he said that, and I thought about it, and this is when I was still just not as deep into my relationship with Jesus. I used it when I was like, oh, it's like systematic recruiting. You know what I'm saying? you got to do one follow up, you got to do another follow up.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever. Okay, it's the same thing. And he said the reason I'm bringing this up because he mentioned that the best way, at least to start it off, to start the conversation or to start the just bringing the idea or the seed in somebody is to you invite them, they ask you a question, you just tell them about how God has worked in your life and what he's done.
Yeah.
And then let that be the next point.
Yeah.
Right. After the way you live your life and they see your behavior and how you go through your daily life and how you treat others and how you treat yourself and your family, all of that will create curiosity. And then it'll ask the next question. Or they'll see someone else and someone else will be talking about it. And it'll just start all these little sirens.
Yeah, cross-pollinating, yeah.
Like, man, what's going on?
Yeah.
And subconsciously, though, the question will come out. It'll be, why not? Or what do I have to do? And that's just another portion of the spirit saying, just move forward, man. Just move forward. Right. But yeah, it was just the biggest thing was like, just share your story.
Yeah.
Share your story because God's going to work in all of our lives in a different way. Those that have gone through it are really capable of speaking to it.
Yeah.
And it may be that connection with one person and it with another. So now it's fantastic that you're actually, you're doing those things and you're looking for God to use you in that manner.
Yeah. I'm trying, man, and it's just because like I thought about it. Like I started computing everything to recruiting, right? And that's what happened. Like it hit me because I was like, okay. And another thing I thought too, I was like, all right, if I was a station commander right now, and I was out area canvassing with one of my recruiters, and one of my recruiters walked by a perfectly fine applicant and said nothing to them, I would bug out.
Yeah.
So then I was like, but what about me? I was like, yo, why am I not being on mission for God and his kingdom? Yeah. And I was like, why is it so easy? And I started thinking about that. I was like, you know what? And that's why like now when God puts it on my heart to talk to somebody about the gospel, it's not easy. And a lot of times I'll be like yesterday it happened. I was driving in my car and I saw this guy going into the liquor store. And I was like, yo, you got to tell him, you got to talk to this guy about the gospel. So then I said, nah, I don't have time. I'm going to get my hair cut, blah, blah, blah. So I keep driving. I go across the street. I get to the haircut spot. I pull into the parking spot. And then I was like, no, go back. He's still there. So I went back. So I drove back across the highway, went right there. Now, when I got there, he was still in his car. He had just gotten back into his car. But now at this point, he was like talking to somebody else. And now at this point, I'm like, bro, you're being a hella creeper. I was like, this is no way to be like, I was like, you know what? I was like, but immediately that was like, you know what? If you had spoken to him 10 minutes ago when you had that inclination to, because then I thought about it too. I was like, okay, well, if I don't share the gospel with him, then who will? And I was like, and I can't keep putting it on somebody else. I was
Yeah.
like, I can't be like, oh, somebody else will stop him. Because how do I know that's true? How do I know that's reality? And that's really just like what's been, pressing onto me lately. It's just, and like you said, man, it's so true. Like, the fruits of your labor. It's like if you're in communion with God and you're praying and you're reading and your life is changing, right? Like it should be,
Yeah.
then other people are going to see that and they're gonna be like, yo, what is it that, like, what do you got that I don't have? But if you're calling yourself out and you're saying, oh, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christian, but your life does not depict that,
Yeah.
well, now you're pushing people away because they're like, oh, you Christians do this or you Christians do this. And it's like, nah, man, like that's not what this is about. So it's both. Like you gotta pay attention to, so I heard when I went to a men's retreat and the pastor was giving his sermon, and he's from the Bahamas, right?
Yeah.
So he was telling us a story about when years ago he went back home. He was visiting family, and there's these two. So he's white, and there's these two white guys that came walking up to him, and they said, "Excuse me, sir," or whatever. Like they got in like his way or something, and he was like, "Oh," I was like, immediately, they're like, "Oh, sorry," and like, but they kind of got like rude a little bit or whatever. So then they were like, "Oh, what do you do for work?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm a pastor." So then like they kind of like they were like, "Oh, well, like." Sorry about that, sir, whatever. And then the one guy looks over at the Pastor Chet, and he goes, "Oh, I'm a Christian." And then his friend looks at him and goes, "You are?" And and the pastor was like, "Yo, see?" He's like, "How if you told people you were a Christian, would they immediately be like, 'Oh, you are?' Or are they gonna be like, 'Oh, yeah, I know he is?'"
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing, and that got me really thinking. It's like, bro, like everybody can say that. Everybody can say, "Oh, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian." Because think about how many people in America identify as Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but are we living the right way? Are we, raising our children the right way? Are we being the husbands that God has called us to be? God tells us to, you know, our wife is the church, right? So are we doing that? And I'll be real, man. For 2 years, I wasn't. And first of all, 6 years, I wasn't. And I wasn't being the best husband or father that I needed to be. And now I'm like, okay, you know what? God's definitely correcting my paths. And let's see where he takes us.
Yeah, and I agree with you on all those things, and that's why for whether it makes a difference in my Marines when they see me or anyone, I'm like, hey man, I'm not a saint, so don't expect me to be one. And naturally, people when they see something or they see anybody's behavior, they see my behavior, like I get it, man. If you're gonna hold on to all the negative things that you want to count,
Mm-hmm.
but you're never gonna stack up all of those negatives against the positives.
Yeah.
There's gonna be way more positive than there is negative,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not perfect. And
Yeah.
that's one part though. Is a lot of people who don't have a relationship with Jesus, and they don't believe in Jesus Christ. They don't believe in God, or they're skeptical or whatever. They're expecting like you have to be perfect, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't, and we're not going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, well, you're not perfect, so I don't believe in God. I don't believe you're a Christian. Cool, man. That's like people that say, yeah, man, I work out. Really? Because you're not good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's like the other day,
Yeah.
someone was telling me that they didn't believe in the Bible. This happened at drill too. They were like, "Oh well," the guy said, "God damn." So this Lance Corporal standing at the window, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh God damn." So I look over at him, and I'm like, "Hey, Lance Corporal." He's like, "What's going on, Sergeant?" And I've never met this Marine before. And I just look at him and I was like, "Hey, man," I was like, "Listen, I completely understand that you don't believe in God or you don't have a relationship with God." And I was like, "But it's very disrespectful for you to, in uniform, be standing here saying that." I was like, "You may not have a relationship with him, but I do. And I was like, if you don't mind, I was like, I kind of find that offensive. He goes, yeah, well, it doesn't matter. And I was like, well, it does. I was like, because if I said something to offend you, I would be sorrowful, right? I was like, I would apologize, and you would expect me to apologize. And I was like, well, and I said to him, I said, but you know what I find funny? He goes, what's that? I said, so you said, that, and I was like, but you don't believe in him. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, so why damn something you don't believe in? I was
Mhm.
like, because you're in order to damn him, it has to be real.
Yeah.
Like, you can't damn something that's not real. So I was like, so you doing that is actually proving his existence
Yeah.
because you're trying to damn him. And he's like, well, that's not what it is. I'm like, no, that's exactly what it is. And I was like, and I was just like, and then I was like, but let me ask you this question, because I was waiting on admin, so I was waiting forever. And I was just like, let me ask you this question, like, why do you feel that way? Like, do you feel like you've been wrong? Do you feel like he's like, there's so many reasons, but one of the things he goes, how am I supposed to believe a Bible that was written by man? And I was immediately just like, okay, well, I heard you say that you have a bachelor's degree. He goes, I do. I was like, so when you went to school and you were taught by all of those men and women, you believed them and then took a test about everything they said out of a book that was written by man, but that's completely okay. And I was like, and I'm supposed to trust you as a man who has a bachelor's degree, but you're just a man. And he's like, "Oh, well, that's not the same thing." I'm like, "Yes, it is." And I'm like, "Bro, like if you look at the Bible has eyewitness accounts." I was like, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These people, they all have an eyewitness account. Well, they're all different. Yes, because they were eyewitness accounts from different people's viewpoints. They have to be different. I was like, if you were in a court case and everybody's viewpoint was exactly the same, the case is going to get dropped because that's fraud. Like, no, that's not how life works. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, bro, I'm like, listen, I want you to understand something. And I was like, maybe I'm wrong. And I was like, it's not that God's not doesn't exist. It's that you don't want God to exist. It's
Mhm.
not that you don't, it's that you don't want God to exist. You don't want to have a relationship with him. And I was like, listen, bro, like, that's completely fine, but don't say he doesn't exist because you don't believe in him. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And, and then the funny thing is that this other Lance Corporal, he just kind of was just sitting there and he just hops into the conversation and he's just like, let me ask you a question, man. He goes, have you ever read the Bible? He's like, do you even know anything about it? And he was like, or have you read it just because just to prove him wrong? And he was like, and the Lance Corporal goes, if you don't read it with the right intentions, you're never going to receive what's meant for you. And I
Mm.
and I was like, yo. And I just walked away. I was like, oh man. And
Amazing.
then I said, hey man, I asked him for his first name and I told him I was gonna pray for him. But yeah, man, it is. But
It-
yeah, it was
tag,
crazy. I
work,
had
tag team work to perfection, man. You're
yeah.
just like, you were doing the first part, he came second
Yo,
part.
yeah, he just came out of nowhere, this little Lance Corporal. I was like, oh shit, what's up, bro? I was like, yo, good looking. He was like, I got you, Sazar. He's like, yo, you right. But yo, so we just hit like a little over an hour. So what do you some just last minute conversation?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts as far as like, what do you have on your mind right now? Anything like you want to get out? Just anything that you've been through while on the duty that God kind of, that God got you through, but you had a different plan, and He was like, nah, that's not what this is about. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, every part of my career, man. Every part
Mm.
of my career for the last, since I came on recruiting duty up until every part of my career, I've had a plan for, and the plan has never worked that way. It's been
Mm.
better because every part of the plan that didn't go the way I intended or the way I wanted, God's timing when it finally happened, it was perfect. And
Mm.
what I would leave with yourself and with anyone watching or anybody whatever, even if it's just one person, our plans, they're our plans, and
Mm.
9 times out of 10, our plan won't align with God's plan because we want everything now.
Mm.
And there are times that God has to do a work in us and through us before he can land the blessing into our life because we're not ready to receive it yet.
Bro.
So patience is a virtue. Don't worry about it. It will work. You know.
Yeah. Bro, you're speaking to me, bro, because that's the heart, bro. Patience, yo. Oh my, he's been hitting me over the head with patience and pride, and it's just like, and as I keep getting better with it, I also keep getting like the other day, I went to Target, right, and I was getting some shopping done, and then as I'm walking out, they got Starbucks, and I asked so this is where I messed up. So I asked my daughter, I said, "Oh, do you want a cake pop?" She said, "Yes." After I asked her if she wants a cake pop, I look to the left and there's like a line of 12 people. And I'm like, no. So I look at her and I'm like, well, can we just I was like, we can go to the bakery. She goes, no, I want a cake pop. And I was like, are you really about to make me wait through this long line because you want a cake pop? And she was like, please. I was like, okay. So then I get in line and I look at the cashier and I just look at him. I'm like, yo, can I just get a cake pop? He goes, no, you have to wait in this whole line. And I was like, bro, all you got to do is hand me one cake pop and just charge my card and that's it. And I was like, but then I sat there and I stood there and I was like, you know what, man? I was like, God's just teaching you patience. I was like, what am I mad at? You know what I mean? And I continued. I was like, calm down. And that's what it is, man. He's definitely teaching me patience. And you're right, man. You're not, if God has a plan, and there's times where you're not ready to receive the blessing that he has for you, or you're not or you're not well enough equipped, or you don't know or have the experience that you need, and it's like, it's, for instance, like if I didn't go through my issues that I had with pornography, well, then I can't testify and I can't share my testimony with somebody who's battling through pornography. I can't do that, right? And it's like, oh, well, why does God allow these bad things to happen? Well, it's because now I'm able to be this for this person. And also, I'm the one who made the decision ultimately, but now I'm able to minister to these people who are going through these different things, right? And that's what I'm coming to right now, is realizing, okay, you know what? God didn't want you to be a career recruiter 4 years ago. And now you've had this past 2 years to, change your life, be better, do all these different things. And now I'm like, okay, well, where can he use me? And what did all of that equip me for? And we'll find out.
You will, bro. You will, man. I know you will, bro.
Amen. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Pedro. I really appreciate you taking out the time to be with us tonight. Thank you for everything, for sharing your own testimony and talking to us about your own life and experiences as well. And say hi to everybody for me. And thank you so much. And hopefully one of these days I get to meet you. But we'll figure it out.
We will, brother. I will. This, man. One of my favorite verses is Joshua 1:9. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
Amen.
Hold on to that, bro.
All right. Thanks a lot, brother. Have a good night.
Have a good night. All right. Bye.